They are going to make a movie about this story, and when they do, people are going to be sitting in the audience screaming at themselves,
how could the guy think he was going to get away with it?
Is that a good intro? But first, new merch! Let's see what it looks like. Keep clam and vlog on. That would have been funny.
He's kidding.
All right, work, vlog, let's go.
And it's a little big.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and before we get started, check this out. I quite like it. I like it. This story has been going on for quite some time now, and trust me, it's absolutely fascinating whether or not you like poker. The things that I PVR on my television that I will watch while exercising in order of preference go poker, darts, UFC. And then if I don't have anything to watch on PVR, I watch golf. And this vlog is about poker and comes at the request of a subscriber named RyoPackQ. Who asked if I was aware of what was going on and what I thought about it. Now, this has been the rage in the poker community for a few weeks now, and people have been talking about it, doing live streams on it, doing podcasts on it, investigative journalism, and we're gonna get into that. And it's taken me some time to do a vlog on this because I had to make sure I understood the situation before making a video on it. I prefer to be insightful as opposed to incendiary, researched as opposed to reactionary. Okay, what's going on? A poker player named Mike Postle is alleged to have been involved in some form of a cheating scam which took place during live stream poker play at a place called Stone's Gambling Hall. The Stone's Casino, for its part, is a very new casino in Sacramento, California, and what they were doing was live streaming poker via Twitch so that people could watch poker live, sort of. You know, there was a 30-minute delay to preserve the integrity of the game, and so what ended up happening? Well, Mike Postle apparently won in excess of $250,000 over the course of a year to a year and a half playing on the live stream poker. And this number is shocking for a couple of reasons, first and foremost of which is the stakes that they were playing was relatively low stakes. From what I understand, they were playing $1, $3 no limit hold'em and pot limit Omaha. And for those of you who may not be too familiar with poker and don't necessarily understand what $1, $3 no limit hold'em is, it is poker whereby the small blind and the big blind are $1 and $3 respectively. It is by no means high stakes poker, so when someone wins $250,000 over the course of, say, 18 months, it starts raising suspicions. But it gets even more suspicious than the mere amount that Mike Postle won over the course of time in which he won it. By all accounts, Mike Postle is not new to the poker world. He's been playing poker for upwards of 16 years. And historically, he has had in no way, shape, or form anything near the success that he has had over the last 18 months playing live stream poker at Stone's Gambling Hall. And to make matters even more obviously suspicious, it's not even as though Mike Postle was winning this amount of money just playing any old game. It was only when he was playing live stream poker via the Twitch online streaming thing. He was not having any of this success while playing off-stream, only while playing the live stream. And Mike Postle might have gotten away with it if it weren't for one meddling Veronica Brill. Veronica Brill is another poker player and was the commentator during the live streams where Postle was making his hundreds of thousands of dollars. And she publicly accused Mike Postle of cheating even though she had no direct or concrete evidence that he was in fact cheating. And it was Veronica Brill's public accusations that got the ball rolling, and the entire poker community then started sifting through in meticulous detail over 200 hours of the live play in which Mike Postle was involved. And the information that the poker community in their aggregate knowledge was able to pull out was phenomenally incriminating. And it was set out in meticulous detail in a series of live streams put on by Joe Ingram 1 on his YouTube channel. Go check it out if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen it, I hope you have hours to watch because he put on hours of live streams. He went through over 200 hours of Mike Postle's play to pull out the most damning pieces of information that showed that he had to have in fact been cheating. The poker community put together spreadsheets detailing Mike Postle's success rate, which was not just an outlier, but an outlier of an outlier. It was statistically impossible that anyone should have that level of success playing poker over that period of time. Statistically impossible. And the evidence that the poker community in their aggregate knowledge pulled together showed that Mike Postle was always looking down at his groin, intensely staring into his cell phone, that he was putting his hand on his hat at times in a very awkward manner. And what they put together and revealed is that there is in fact something called bone conductor technology that can run its way through the side of a hat that would vibrate to give you indications or signing or like Morse code indicating what cards the other players might have in the event that someone was able to determine what cards another player had. And why would Mike Postle have success during the live stream and not during the off-stream play? The live stream employed a technology called RFID in the cards, which is radio frequency identification of the cards, allowing them to be put over some form of a scanner. Each each card having a distinct RFID such that the readers could pick it up and display the cards on the graphics that would be shown to people, not in real time, but on a 30-minute delay when the stream was aired on Twitch. And although there is a delay in the display of the graphic on the stream, there is a live read of the cards themselves via the RFID card reader. And some internet sleuths have proposed that there are these sort of interceptors that could intercept the RFID of the cards, and that Mike Postle could therefore know what cards other players at the table had and govern his conduct accordingly. And this would explain why Mike Postle was staring down at his phone in his groin, oftentimes putting his hand on his head to potentially get vibration indicators of what cards other people had, or potentially what his line should be, bet, fold, check, raise, whatever. And the proverbial poo-poo has hit the fan, the gig is up, and Mike Postle is apparently in hiding. So that is the factual backdrop for your general information before we get into the legal side of this. But before we even get into the legal side, I want to illustrate the wonder and beauty that is the internet. The collective knowledge that can be pooled together in an instant on the internet is a thing of beauty. One individual, however smart they may be, has finite intellect and finite time. But when you amass the internet and when you get groups of people together, you can basically have infinite wisdom and infinite time to delve so deep into subjects that the information you can pull out would be exponentially more detailed than the information one person could dig up on their own, even if they spent 24 hours a day doing it. The aggregate knowledge of the internet and the poker community has basically conducted an investigation that rivals any investigation carried out by any intelligence agency anywhere in the world, full stop. That being said, full credit has to go to Joe Ingram, who took the time to sift through all of the information being provided to him and put all the pieces together in multiple massively awesome detailed live streams. Okay, now moving on to the law part. As one would imagine, there are lawsuits that have been filed. According to reports, because I don't yet have a copy of the lawsuit itself, dozens of poker players are suing Mike Postle, the Stones Gambling Hall and tournament director, and Stones employee Justin Curatis for $30 million total, $10 million each for the damages they purport to have suffered as a result of this cheating scheme. And this is a civil lawsuit and not a criminal lawsuit, although apparently there are criminal investigations that are ongoing. And I immediately go into full lawyer mode and immediately begin thinking about the strategy and substance of this lawsuit. My first reaction was that nobody should be suing Mike Postle, they should be suing the casino itself. And why would that be? Mike Postle is probably judgment proof, and I'm not saying this in a mean-spirited, judgmental way. Mike Postle probably doesn't have $10 million. In fact, Mike Postle probably doesn't have very much money at all, which is why he resorted to this scheme of cheatery in the first place. Cheatery. Justin Curatis probably does not have $10 million either, although at the very least we know that he has a job at Stone's Casino, and if he was indeed involved in this cheating scheme, was probably getting his cut of the monies being made by Mike Postle. But it brings up the basic strategic point that in any lawsuit, you don't really want to go after the judgment-proof creditors, you want to go after the most solvent creditor, the casino. Although apparently in this particular lawsuit, they are going after all three entities, so whatever monies they don't get from Postle or Curatis, they are presumably going to get from the casino if they win on the lawsuit itself. Now, not knowing how the damages are detailed in the lawsuit, my suspicion is that the damages themselves are not going to be over $10 million, and that the plaintiffs are sort of going for the full amount from all three people, and whatever they get from one party is going to sort of come off the aggregate that they are claiming from all three. And I suspect that the plaintiffs are suing the casino for and on behalf of the acts carried out by their employee, that being Justin Curatis, which brings up the interesting question in law as to when an employer is responsible for the acts of their employees. And as far as the casino goes, it also brings up the interesting question in law as to what responsibility the casino has to ensure that no cheating is going on within its premises. Now, in law, an employer is very often held liable for the acts or omissions or faults or damages caused by one of its employees, and we're going to get into that in a second. But in law, an establishment is also required to provide a reasonable safe space for its patrons. And I don't mean safe space in terms of an emotional safe space, I mean a literal safe space. A business that opens its commerce to the public is required to ensure that it is providing a reasonable safe environment for its patrons. And so a casino cannot necessarily just wash their hands of liability and say, we are not responsible for the cheating that occurs at our premises if it's not our employees that are doing the cheating. If a casino knows that some of its patrons are cheating, or ought to know that some of its patrons are cheating, I imagine that they can have some sort of liability towards the people who were so cheated. In a sense, it's no different than creating an environment that is not safe for the patrons of the commerce. Poorly lit hallways where patrons get assaulted by other patrons. These are things that businesses have been held liable for vis-a-vis their patrons. And so while I totally understand the plaintiff suing Mike Postle for his direct act in this, I think they could equally sue the casino for allowing it to happen in the first place, even if their employees were not involved in the heist, in the What are the dogs doing? What are you guys doing? Now, the plaintiffs are suing tournament director Justin Curatis as well as the casino for $10 million each. And my thoughts on that are Justin Curatis is probably going to abscond or go bankrupt. So any judgment they get against Justin Curatis, he's probably not going to be able to satisfy, and if he does satisfy it, it's going to be minimal amounts. And this is typically what happens when people sue an enterprise and the employee for the wrongful acts of the employee. In the context of those types of relationships, the employee typically is not the solvent one, it is the business. And oftentimes people don't even waste time suing the employee, they just go straight after the employer, the company. The company then in turns calls the employee in warranty and says any judgment that the plaintiff gets against us, the employee is bound to reimburse us for towards the plaintiff. The result being the same, that the employee typically goes bankrupt and it is the company that is stuck with any judgment. Luckily for the companies, typically they have insurance for these types of claims, and it's the insurance company that assumes the defense and pays any judgment that the plaintiffs may get against the company so insured. But this lawsuit will bring to the fore when an employer is responsible for the fault of its employees. And as a rule, the employer is responsible for the fault of its employees. In fact, the exception to this rule, at least in Quebec and I suspect similarly elsewhere, are when the fault of the employee so far surpass or exceed or are not within the realm of the conduct of the employee that the employer could have had no reasonable control over that conduct. But in general, employers are held responsible for the damages caused by their employees. It's a concept called vicarious liability. I in fact discussed this in a video I did breaking down a scene from Suits, which I'll link right over here. Vicarious liability meaning that the employers are generally held vicariously liable for the acts or faults or damages caused by their employees, and the idea being that someone opens up a business, opens it up to the public, has their employees who they train, who they have oversight over, who they control, who they tell how to do their jobs. If they cause damages towards the general population that they serve for and on behalf of the company and for the profit of that company, the company should be held responsible for the damages caused by their employees to the extent that the damages don't result from something that was so far out of line with what they were intended to do as employees that the employer cannot be held responsible for it. And the other interesting question that arises from this entire situation is, assuming this goes to trial and assuming it goes to a trial by jury, how does one go about convincing the jury that Mike Postle is in fact guilty of cheating based on the evidence that they have, based on the statistical improbabilities of his success playing poker within that frame of time, based on the absolute inexplicable manner in which he played hands that no other poker professional in the world would play that way unless they were cheating? It's going to be a very difficult thing to prove. It is going to require expert testimony, poker pros coming in to explain why the line of play was so far out of what is normal under the circumstances that the only other thing that could explain it is additional information that only the player had. You're going to need to bring in the Antonio Esfandiaris, the Daniel Negreanus to help explain what poker is about, why this line of play makes absolutely no sense unless someone is cheating. You may not want to bring in Phil Hellmuth. He might just berate the jury and call them donkeys, but you're going to need to bring in pros to convince a jury that what they're witnessing is not normal poker play, but rather cheating. And it may be difficult to explain this to a jury. In fact, it may be difficult to explain it to a judge because judges have expertises, and one of the biggest problems that lawyers have is getting in front of a judge with no expertise in the subject matter at hand and trying to make the judge understand that particular subject matter. Kind of like the time I ended up in front of a family law judge of 40 some odd years and had to explain the nuances of search engine optimization and the internet at large. There is no doubt that it's going to be a difficult thing to prove to a jury despite all the overwhelming evidence that is pretty much obvious to anybody with a grasp on the game. But alas, that is what lawyers are for, and as they say, a great lawyer can make complicated matters understandable to someone with no prior knowledge on those subjects. And I will be following all developments in this matter with great interest because I find it fascinating, and I promise you and guarantee you they will be making a movie about this in 2 to 3 years. Maybe 5 years, depending on how long the trial takes. All right, and that is it. I hear the dog whining and I gotta go take her for a walk. If you like my content, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below, share my channel with someone who you think would appreciate it. It will help me grow. If you wanna support the channel, there is a PayPal link down in the pinned comment. There is some merch links. Keep calm and vlog on, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!